standard of Melbourne's coffees is quite high. I think there's quite a lot of demand for really good coffee. I think that a lot of people work really hard and that people have really high standards and know exactly what they want. Like, I guess it depends on the area of Melbourne. Like, for example, in the CBD, people know exactly how they like their latte, how they like their cappuccino, etc. But yeah, I think there's a lot of competition, which is really good for the industry because it means that people work really hard. People, as they say, buy with their feet, so if they don't like the coffee, they'll just leave. So I think that helps to keep Melbourne's coffee at a really good standard.
I've lived in both Melbourne and Sydney, and to be honest, I've been served bad coffee and drinks in both. Melbourne has more of a reputation for a coffee culture, but I think that has something more to do with the fact that there are more coffee locations, things like cafes are all mixed in with the CBD. It's got more of a vibe to it. Whereas Sydney in itself is more separated. You have good food locations, but they're normally further away from places of work. So I'd say that Melbourne has the reputation. Whether or not it lives up to its reputation all of that time, I can't guarantee. But I think that there is a growing concern, and particularly there are some very good shops. I've heard of some very discerning, both bean growers, grinders, and all sorts of different techniques happening in the docklands, that sort of thing. So my suggestion would be don't rest on the laurels. Just because it looks pretty on top doesn't actually necessarily mean it's a nice glass underneath.
I think the standard of coffee is very, very high in Melbourne. Personally, I live in the city, so there's lots of, I seek places to go and have nice coffees, and I think there's plenty available that make a really good standard of coffee. I've been overseas in Europe and I've struggled to find a lot of nice coffees, but it could be that I just don't know where to look.
I think that Melbourne's actually really sophisticated in terms of its coffee culture. There's quite a few coffee tasting and cupping sort of sessions that are around, and the most famous one is Brother Baba Buddha. I think that's pronounced right. And they are absolute coffee connoisseurs. They take microprocessors and import it into Melbourne. So I think that Melbourne people have a really, really sophisticated palate.
I think you get a bit of both. Probably in Melbourne, you get a pretty good standard in some places, and you get young people who know what they're talking about with their coffee, and there's proper espressos and stuff you get in the city, but also you can get the real suburban kind of just absolute garbage. So it's interesting. Like, I know a lot of older people, my parents, for example, have probably never had a proper coffee, and they think Nescafe is quite sophisticated because it's better than home brand. And so, compared to Sydney, I think, although it's a long time since I've been to Sydney, the culture here is more European style, less kind of American business coffee break style, more kind of like we're enjoying coffee